Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. It is Week 15, and we have got some tough calls for you. Justin Herbert in a great matchup against Tampa Bay. Tyrone Tracy in a terrible matchup against Baltimore. Najee Harris at Philadelphia. Can Calvin Ridley bounce back? How about the Bears wide receivers against Minnesota? They were great against Minnesota just a few weeks ago. Adam Azer here with Heath Cummings and Dave Richard. Jamie will be joining us shortly. Guys, give me one tough call that's giving you indigestion this week, really giving you tummy troubles.
I'll start, and in my very Heath fashion, I'll give you 17. No, I think it's 15. The quarterbacks this week, there are 7 that I definitely want to start. And there are 12 that I definitely don't want to start. And there are 13 in the middle, from QB 8 in my rankings, which is right now I think is Jared Goff or Jameis Winston in the projections, to QB 20, which is either Anthony Richardson or Jordan Love, within basically 1.5 points in my projections. Nice. And the thing is, like, a projection for Anthony Richardson and Kyler Murray and some of the other guys in this group is completely useless, because he might score 5 fantasy points and he might score 30. And those are the types of decisions we have to make at the quarterback position this week.
Well, why don't you just get one of the 7?
That would have been better. Yeah, I would like it if I had one of the 7, but it's a little difficult to acquire a top 7 quarterback in week 15.
Let's compare notes. Who are your 7?
My 7 are Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, Sam Darnold, Kyler Murray.
I'm nervous about Hurts. I'm going to start him, but he's my 8th. So I worry a little bit about the matchup. I worry about just how little he's throwing and how ineffective he is throwing. Adam, you talked about how on the very first throw last week, he had A.J. Brown open for a big gain, if not a touchdown, and he didn't take it. And I think he's going to – look, if you made the playoffs with Jalen Hurts, you're probably going to start him. But in one of my leagues, I've got Jalen Hurts and Sam Darnold. And Darnold's taking on the Bears, and the Bears have been terrible lately. And I kind of want to start Darnold, as silly as that sounds. But the matchup makes me nervous for Hurts, and his lack of, like, doing anything as a passer. Honestly, it's kind of giving me like Anthony Richardson vibes, because earlier in this year, we were really worried about Anthony Richardson as a passer, and we were hoping he'd be able to get it done as a rusher. Hurts has been getting it done as a runner. It's just, can he have a monster game? And I think Darnold has more upside to do that.
Well, look, for Hurts, it's kind of going to come down to who scores the rushing touchdowns. That's the way it's been, because they're throwing so little. And he scored 20. He had a terrible game. He threw for barely over 100 yards against the Panthers, scored 28 points last week because he ran a lot. So there is that. But the 3 games before that, he did not reach 20 points. I am surprised, though, that Kyler Murray is one of your 7, that you just trust him this week against New England when he's been so unpredictable and pretty disappointing. And people were, I've got a lot of, should I drop Kyler Murray, Heath? So you are pretty confident in him against the Patriots.
Well, the last couple of words you said there certainly help. It's against the Patriots. I don't think they're a very good defense, even coming off of a bye. And I think you're right. Like, there is still a low floor for Kyler Murray. There's much more reason to question him as a passer and a fantasy quarterback than there is Jalen Hurts. But the upside's so good and the defense is so bad that I do trust him.
Each of the last 3 quarterbacks they've taken on have had at least 25 fantasy points. It's Richardson, it's Tua, it's Stafford. I think you would expect 25 plus at this point from Tua every week. Stafford and Richardson, they have that type of upside, and I think it's the matchup, and I think it does help quite a bit here.
All right, I'm going to go through the news and notes real quick. I want to remind everyone that FFT Dynasty is today at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. And I want to thank everybody, our YouTube audience, very dedicated audience. I know we didn't have sound yesterday, so we had to change up our video a little bit. We're back today. We sound hopefully good, but things are back to normal. So it's good to be back here doing the show as we usually do, and not with it looking differently. So I apologize for that. But FFT Dynasty today, Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. Also today on CBS Sports Network at 1 p.m. Eastern, it is Jamie, Heath, and Robert Turbin talking fantasy. And then Friday, we'll help you set your lineups on CBS Sports Network at 1 p.m. Eastern again. All right, your news and notes. Will Levis has been playing through a sprained AC joint all year, he said, and it got worse when he took that hit last week. He re-aggravated it. They haven't ruled him out. They've been optimistic, I guess, preliminarily for Will Levis against the Bengals this week. Isaac Guerrero missed practice, so right now we're expecting Patrick Taylor to be the main guy for San Francisco. We'll see. Well, hopefully that comes true because I know people are picking up Patrick Taylor. We'll preview that game later, Thursday against the Rams. Zamir White is out for the season. Sincere McCormick is now 57% rostered. He gets Atlanta this week, then Jacksonville. Wide receiver news, Demarcus Robinson missed practice, and again, that Thursday game against San Francisco. We got Jamie. What's going on? We got maybe some squeaky wheels, if I can get my squeaky crickets. We got maybe some squeaky wheels this week. Deebo Samuel wants the ball. A.J. Brown wants the Eagles to pass more. And Green Bay wants to get Jaden Reed the ball more. Are you motivated by these potential squeaky wheels, Deebo Samuel, A.J. Brown, and Green Bay wanting to get Jaden Reed more involved?
I was never benching A.J. Brown. I'm still hesitant to start Deebo Samuel. And Jaden Reed is still just number 3 receiver. So hopefully all these things come to fruition, but this is fantasy playoff time. If you got here with A.J. Brown, you're not benching him. If you got here with Deebo Samuel, you're lucky. If you got here with Jaden Reed, just continue to use him as you have been.
Okay, and by the way, speaking of sounds that we're going to be playing on the show today, we are going to be playing this sound because the fantasy cops are coming on the show later today. Get excited. George Pickens is likely out this week at Philadelphia. Offensive line news, the Patriots are hopefully getting Cole Strange back this week, starting offensive lineman. He's coming off IR. And on defense, Browns cornerback Greg Newsome is out for the season. Dallas linebacker DeMarvion Overshown has tore 3 ligaments in his knee. Oh, terrible. And if you were starting John Parker Romo and you liked him, he got signed by the Patriots and could be their starting kicker this week. All right, let's get into some tough calls. So we'll do some tough calls. We'll take a look at Thursday night's game. We'll do the fantasy cops. I'm going to read your emails at fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. Justin Herbert is tough call number 1. So he has 3 straight games with fewer than 18 points. He has 2 touchdowns in those 3 games. But here come the Buccaneers. Does anybody want to start Justin Herbert? By the way, this list is a compilation of guys suggested by all 3, Dave, Jamie, and Heath. So it's not necessarily a consensus list. But does anybody want to start Justin Herbert this week?
No.
I'm tempted to.
The only reason anyone should even consider it is because Tampa Bay has been so awful.
That's why.
Justin Herbert has not been he's barely a starter in a 2-quarterback league based on what he's done this season and the last month. And if he doesn't have Ladd McConkey, I don't think I would even consider him against Tampa Bay either.
Well, let's get that out of the way right now, Dave. You're not even considering him if he doesn't have McConkey, right?
Sure. I guess I'm not. Yeah, I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, and I don't think the Chargers' run game is going to be able to help them out very much. I think a lot's going to fall on Justin Herbert, and I know it sounds crazy that if there's no Ladd McConkey, how's this guy supposed to get 20 fantasy points? But I think it's absolutely within the realm of possibility given the matchup, and it's strictly that reason.
How many high-scoring games?
The secondary is banged up for Tampa, and not having Winfield has been a problem for them in the past. And just the idea is that Herbert can still he can still finish like a low-end QB1, even without McConkey, because of the matchup and because I just don't see the Chargers being able to run the ball.
Yeah, so Jamie asked a good question. How many high-scoring games? They have had 2 games where they've given up more than 20 points. They gave up 27 points to the Bengals, and Herbert threw 36 passes. 30 points against the Ravens, and Herbert threw 36 passes. So if you think that Tampa Bay can score, maybe not 30, but 27, something like that, you might get a lot of pass attempts. If you have McConkey out there, it's not the craziest thing.
It's not the craziest thing. I just think that that's not the way Harbaugh wants to play, unfortunately.
He did earlier this year. Like when they came out of the bye, we saw Herbert throwing a lot more than before the bye. The question is now just like how they've been playing lately. I think that's how they've wanted to play, is what we've seen lately.
All right, let's move on.
I will say,
Go ahead, finish up.
He has had a month of pretty spectacular matchups. He played the Bengals. He played the Ravens, who maybe they're good now, but they're still bottom 5 in terms of playing quarterbacks. They played the Falcons. It was a fantastic matchup. The Chiefs over the last month have been a great matchup. Like it's not like he's been bad recently because of a difficult schedule.
How many of those games did he have a good game? Because I know the Falcons game is one where he definitely let us down.
He's only been good against the Bengals in that stretch.
Okay. So maybe we could say here that Herbert doesn't have the same type of upside as other quarterbacks that we'll talk about. Certainly other quarterbacks that I currently have ranked ahead or behind Herbert. I should probably move Herbert down.
All right.
Just based on that, just based on upside. Could he get you 20? Sure. Can he get you 24? Seems a little hard to believe.
All right, let's go to Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston is outside the top 12 based on your initial rankings that I saw yesterday, but he's top 15, and he gets the Kansas City Chiefs, who give up a lot of big plays. They give up the fifth most yards per catch on pass attempts of 20 or more air yards, and they give up among the most big plays in football, which is weird to say about Kansas City. It's really over the last 4 weeks. Over the last 4 weeks, they've allowed the most completions of 20 or more yards. So here comes Jameis Winston, who throws a lot of interceptions, but also has big upside. Is he a tough call? Is he a tough call for any of you guys this week? Or actually, better question: do you want to start Jameis Winston this week?
Yes and no.
I think he's a very tough call. I picked him up in a league where I already have two quarterbacks because I see a good schedule for him, and my quarterbacks are like it's either going to be him or Baker Mayfield for me this week, and I'm struggling with that because I think you could get 30 points from Winston. We've seen it several times, and the Chiefs are not playing well against the pass, and they're great against the run. That's the thing. You should get a lot of pass attempts for Winston.
So this is one of the quarterbacks that I think I'd be more comfortable starting over Herbert now that I'm thinking about Herbert. And just the fact that I just said it myself, I think Herbert can get to 20 fantasy points? I do. But as far as having that upside to get to 24, 30, like you're talking about, now Herbert doesn't have that, but Jameis does. And it's just game flow more than anything else. I don't think they're going to be able to run on Kansas City. And it's going to mean that Winston's going to throw a lot. And we've seen him throwing the ball a ton this year. And yeah, there's pick sixes and all that stuff. He'll make mistakes, but he'll also throw a bunch of touchdowns as well. Low-end starter.
He was not a starter for me at the beginning of the week. When I update my rankings tonight, he will be. One of the biggest line moves since Monday was that Cleveland was a 6-point underdog with an implied total of 19 at the beginning of the week. They are now a 4-point underdog with an implied total of 20.5. That should probably be 2.5, really, because the Chiefs don't beat anybody by more than 3. But he's thrown for 315 yards per game since he became the starter. He's averaging 23.3 fantasy points per game, despite the fact he has had to face that terrible matchup that Jalen Hurts has this week, the Steelers, in 2 of his last 3 games. And I mentioned the Chiefs' defense. The first 10 weeks of the season, they allowed one quarterback to throw for more than 269 yards. The last 4 games of the season, quarterbacks are averaging 269 yards passing against them. And that's with Justin Herbert laying a complete egg last week.
How many yards did Aiden O'Connell have on the Black Friday game?
A lot.
He had a pretty good game. I mean,
yeah. So if Aiden O'Connell can put up some good numbers against the Chiefs, then certainly Winston could. Of course, we would have said the same thing about Herbert last week. Didn't work out.
All right. We're going to take a break and talk about some running backs when we come back. But before we take a break, let me remind you about BetMGM because there's still plenty of time to take advantage of this offer. And if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, you can do it with the bonus code FANTASY, and you're going to get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. So you download the BetMGM app and sign up using the bonus code FANTASY. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500. That's amazing, $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses, up to $1,500. Just make sure you use your bonus code FANTASY when you sign up on BetMGM. All right, a quick break. Got to tell you about an exciting award that we are a finalist for, and then we'll be back to talk more tough calls after this on Fantasy Football Today.
Welcome to JJ's.
I'll have a... Wait, there's no way I can get a burger?
No chance, but you can have the NFL on CBS streams live on Paramount+. Oh, hang on. There's a toy.
Najee Harris at Philadelphia. How many catches is he going to have? I don't know. He had 6 in week 13. He didn't have a single target in week 14. There's no rhyme or reason. Eagles' weakness on defense is definitely their run defense. So Najee Harris, we're calling him a tough call. Tyrone Tracy Jr., how many catches is he going to have? He's going to need it against this stout Ravens run defense, but he did have 10 targets last week after only 3 targets the week before. So who do you guys prefer, Najee Harris at Philadelphia or Tyrone Tracy Jr. against Baltimore?
Najee.
I've got Tracy.
I have Tracy ahead for now, but I'm clearly open to changing my mind on this. And I don't feel very confident in either one.
All right, Jamie, make the case for Najee Harris. And are you confident in him?
I'm not confident in either one. I just think that there's a better offensive environment right now for the Steelers. And Najee, I think, will be involved in the passing game because I think they'll be chasing points. And that's kind of what we saw in a back and forth game against the Bengals, why he did have those 6 catches. And so, you look at the games where he's been involved. It was also the snow game. He had the 4 catches in that one as well, where they lost to the Browns. So if the Eagles offense shows up, I think Najee's a big factor in the passing game. Plus, you don't have George Pickens. They were playing with the lead last week. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case again. With Tracy, another offensive line concern for the Giants, quarterback concern again for the Giants, a Ravens team coming off the bye, just, I think, ready to destroy this team. I mean, they're 15-point favorites on the road. You don't see that in the NFL very often. This is going to be a bloodbath. And it just feels like the Giants are going to be absolutely, absolutely destroyed in this game. So I just don't have any faith really in Tracy.
If you knew that neither running back was going to score a touchdown, who would you rather go with?
Tracy in full PPR. No.
Yeah, I think I'd take Najee. I think I would take Najee. And I think it's probably a better shot of Najee scoring than Tracy scoring. So maybe the answer here is Najee and not Tracy.
What is the worst matchup?
Chiefs. Oh, you mean among these two?
Yeah.
Ravens.
So for the season, the Eagles have given up fewer fantasy points per game than the Ravens.
Not the last month, though.
Okay. Well, the Eagles give up. So it's interesting because most of the fantasy points that come against the Ravens are through the air,
which is what we're hoping for Tracy.
Yeah. It's a fair question. That's why these guys are tough calls.
Yeah.
Patrick Taylor, Heath.
I would start both of these guys over Patrick Taylor.
For now, I would start both these guys over Patrick Taylor. I have Tracy and Taylor back to back. I think once we get official word that Taylor's the guy, I'd probably move him ahead of Tracy.
When you say official word that Taylor's the guy, you mean that Garendo's out or
Garendo's
something? Out. Okay. All right. Let's move on to some wide receivers. Marvin Harrison Jr. against New England. I got to say, I don't really this is not that tough of a call for me. I think I want to sit him. How do you guys feel about Marvin Harrison Jr.?
I'm deferring to Heath here because he's been speaking the truth on Marvin Harrison on Sundays pretty much for the last month.
I mean, the only thing that makes you feel good about him is the thing that I said before they faced the Vikings, is that in the matchups that on paper are really good matchups for wide receivers, Marvin Harrison has actually produced pretty consistently good fantasy production. The reason he's a tough call is because he has the ability to score 20 fantasy points. We've seen it multiple times this season. He had 17 against the Vikings. The reason it's also a tough call is because he might get 5 targets and score 8 fantasy points. I think he's almost like Anthony Richardson, except I like him a little bit more. He's a low-end number 3 wide receiver. It's hard to trust, but if you start 3 wide receivers in a flex, I think you definitely start him. He's that guy who could be in your flex that, oh yeah, I've got an extra wide receiver 1 this week.
Is Christian Gonzalez a factor for anyone here?
No.
A little bit. When you talk about an inconsistent receiver, if this was a superstar receiver consistently, then it would be no hesitation. But
right.
The thing that's fascinating about the Cardinals is going into the first Seattle game, everybody was looking at them as maybe the division winner because they were, riding high at that point, playing very well. And then since then, they've lost twice to the Seahawks. They're now looking up at the Seahawks and the Rams, and the 49ers are starting to build momentum. So they have to win. And to me, that's win at all costs, at any cost. So could be we're going to feed James Conner, keep this low scoring game and not make mistakes because the Patriots offense probably not going to do very much. Or it could be we got to get our best players going because we need them. And if that's the case, then hopefully Harrison's going to get the double-digit targets like we saw 2 weeks ago or continue to be featured. So I think he's just is what he is at this point. He's a borderline number 2, number 3 receiver. If you've been starting him, you start him. If you have better options, you can certainly debate a Josh Palmer with no Ladd McConkey. You can debate a fast rising Adam Thielen. These are guys that have a little bit more potential upside.
Where do you come out on those two?
I go Thielen, Harrison, Palmer.
Yeah, and obviously Palmer's only in the discussion if McConkey plays, but if McConkey doesn't play, sorry, but if McConkey
and his matchup, taking on the Bucs.
But if McConkey plays, you're definitely starting McConkey over Harrison, right?
I would start McConkey over Harrison if he gets in full practices. Yeah.
How about Darnell Mooney against the Raiders or Marvin Harrison? Mooney.
I have them projected for the exact same number of fantasy points.
All right. Let's go to our next tough call. We'll stay with the wide receivers here, and we'll go with the Bears guys, Odunze and Keenan Allen. I think people are going to start DJ Moore, but what about Odunze and Keenan Allen at Minnesota? A couple weeks ago or 3 weeks ago against Minnesota, Odunze had 10 targets, but only 8.9 fantasy points. But Keenan Allen, on the other hand, scored 23.6 fantasy points. He had 9 catches, 86 yards, and a touchdown against the Vikings, who allow the most fantasy points to wide receivers. And yes, man, I know I've got a couple of tough calls with Keenan Allen here, especially in my 2 receiver league. So what say you? Are we starting Odunze and Keenan Allen, Dave Richard?
I'm starting Allen. I'm going back to him. I can't imagine that he's going to fall out of the offense and just, one bad week means it's over for him. You just look at the track record. 15 wide receivers have put up at least 15 PPR points against Minnesota this year. 2 wide receivers on the Falcons did it last week, and one of them wasn't Drake London. One was Ray McLeod, played it a lot in the slot, ran a lot of short routes, made plays after the catch. I am hoping that Keenan Allen can have a semblance of that and be able to contribute that way and get his volume back. I also don't think the Bears are going to be able to run the ball in this game, so it's going to mean a lot of volume from Caleb Williams to these guys. It's Odunze who I'm most nervous about. Don't want to chase the 2 touchdowns from last week. They were effectively in garbage time. Certainly the second one was. And so I don't know if that's going to make him someone that's a good number 3 wide receiver. I think DJ Moore is still a good number 2 wide receiver. I think Keenan Allen's a good low-end number 2 wide receiver in full PPR. I think I'm going to start these guys.
I'm really nervous. I think Keenan Allen is definitely one of those guys. It just depends on how far back you want to go. Because it's only 1 bad week in the last 3. Mm-hmm. It's also 5 bad weeks in the last 8. He's had 2 good games in the last 2 months, and they were really good. Odunze's touchdowns, I agree with Dave. I don't want to chase them. On the other hand, I think it was last week that I said, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, he's dominated end zone targets on this team. He now has 12 end zone targets. I think DJ Moore has 5. That has been Caleb's guy in the end zone. And he does have a target share that's very close to Keenan Allen's over the last month. So I agree. I'm starting DJ Moore. Keenan Allen and Odunze are back-to-back for me. Both low-end wide receivers. 3s.
Okay. Jamie, final thought on the Bears guys?
It's probably going to be pretty consistent with a lot of these questions. If they've been in your lineup and you don't have better options, you're starting them. I think Keenan Allen is better off as a number 3, as a starter in a 3 receiver league. DJ Moore, I think, is proven consistent enough to be a starter in 2 receiver leagues. And Odunze, look, we when we get to these guys that you're still picking up off waivers in 10-team leagues and some 12-team leagues, in week 15, you better need them to start them.
How many of these? Sorry, Heath, go ahead.
I think you're going to say the same thing I was, Dave. Go ahead.
No, I'm definitely not going to say the same thing that you were going to say.
I would start Adam Thielen over both Keenan Allen and Odunze.
I agree with
Thielen over all 3.
I might even do that too. How many of these Bears receivers do you think will get 7 or more targets?
All 3 did last time they played, so probably all 3.
All right.
And so did Cole Kmet. 19
receivers have had at least 7 targets against Minnesota. 13 of them have had at least 12.6 PPR points. So there's a nice floor.
It's like 67%, which is exactly what we're going to get in this game. 2
right,
of these
2
3
of the
wide
3
receivers are going to be good.
Yeah.
We're going to trust DJ Moore because more often than not, he's been the guy, even though he was not very good last week. And one of Odunze or Keenan Allen's going to join him. Yeah,
Caleb's threw 23 passes last week. That would be a shock if he only threw that much against the Vikings. They see 38.2 pass attempts per game from quarterbacks. That's the most in football. So again, as Dave said, you can't run the ball on this team. Swift's been awful lately. So you're hoping for a lot of volume, and that's the optimistic case for Keenan Allen and for Roma and for all of them, really. All right. I want to tell you all about the Sports Podcast Awards. You helped us last year. We won the Sports Podcast Awards in the Best Fantasy Betting and Gaming Podcast category. Well, we are a finalist once again, and we need your help to bring home the win, and it only takes 30 seconds to vote. Just click the link in the episode description or in the YouTube chat, or just go to sportspodcastgroup.com, and you can find the categories. And it's Best Fantasy Betting and Gaming Podcast. That's the category that we're a nominee in. So we really would appreciate your support. It means the world to us. And with your vote, we can take this award home. We want to go back to back, baby. So thank you for being part of our journey. Let's make this happen. Go to sportspodcastgroup.com, and then you'll see where you can vote. It's the Best Fantasy Betting and Gaming Podcast. And please vote for fantasy football today. All right, thank you. Back to the tough calls. Malik Nabers is always a tough call. He has 5 explosive plays in his last 2 games with Drew Lock. He had 4 in the previous 5 games combined. So I do like Drew Lock for Malik Nabers, but he still is like barely getting red zone targets, barely getting end zone targets, and he's not even a top 30 wide receiver over his last 7 games. Baltimore gives up the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers. They are playing a little bit better lately. How does Malik Nabers compare to the Bears wide receivers, Jamie?
More over Nabers over the other 2. But I think Nabers and Allen are very similar in terms of their boom bust potential, because Allen, as Heath alluded to, has only had a couple of good games. Most of them have come since Thomas Davis has taken over play calling duties. Thomas Brown has taken over play calling duties for the Bears. With Nabers, he's just not finding the end zone. And it's been frustrating. Yes, he had a 2-point conversion, but he's not scoring touchdowns. And with the injuries that he's dealing with, again, credit to him for playing through them. Who knows how much it's just become a constant problem. The entire Giants offense just scares me. There's no way around it. Baltimore is playing much better in their secondary lately. They're rested. They're ready. They're looking at trying to steal a division from the Steelers. Certainly want to get a wild card and get in the playoffs and make a run. It just feels like they're going to hammer the Giants. So if you can avoid Malik Nabers, I would try to do it. I just think he's a starter in 3 receiver leagues, and that's what he is.
It's really easy to see the range, I think, for Malik Nabers, because we talked about he can't score touchdowns. Obviously, it's been 2 months. Last 3 wide receiver ones against the Ravens. A.J. Brown, 5 for 66, no touchdown, so 11 fantasy points. Ladd McConkey, 6 for 83, no touchdown, so 14 fantasy points. George Pickens, 8 for 89, no touchdown, so 16 fantasy points. I bet he's somewhere between 11 and 16 fantasy points.
That's basically where he's been for the last 2 months, as it is. He's a number 3 receiver.
Yeah, but here, Brown got 6 targets. McConkey got 6 targets. Pickens, who had 8 for 89, had 12 targets. So we are talking about 8 or more targets, and in this horrible 7-game stretch, he's on pace for 180 targets.
Yeah.
So
that's the difference between having good quarterbacks and bad quarterbacks. Those guys are getting it done with good quarterbacks. He's trying to get it done with awful quarterbacks.
Yeah. He is a tough call, because you are seeing 2 straight games with Drew Lock right around 15 PPR fantasy points without a touchdown. That's pretty good. But you also, there's a lower potential than that.
He's my favorite of all the tough call wide receivers we've done. I think he's I agree he's a wide receiver 3, but if we go with Jamie's, there's 30 wide receiver 2s, then he's a wide receiver 2.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'd start him over Marvin Harrison.
Yeah.
All right, so then we got 2 more wide receivers that we'll just lump them in. Jakobi Meyers, Monday night against Atlanta. Amazing matchup. And Jaylen Waddle at Houston. I said this on CBS Sports Network yesterday. I want to repeat it. And this is directly from Jacob. So this is not my thing here. But Jacob was saying that the Dolphins had faced a stretch of teams that were very heavy in zone coverage. And that was bad for Jaylen Waddle and for Tyreek Hill. But, focusing on Waddle here. When they play teams that aren't as zone heavy, that are just normal in terms of zone coverage, which is what they have for the rest of the season. Teams that are either in the middle or low in their zone coverage rate. That's good for the Dolphins wide receivers. So that might set up better for Jaylen Waddle. He starts with Houston this week. So it's Jakobi Meyers and Jaylen Waddle. Meyers against the Falcons, Waddle against Houston. Heath, would you start them over Malik Nabers?
So Jakobi Meyers is the one that I would not put in a tough call category for me. He's a must start wide receiver, top 20 guy. I'm not even even with Desmond Ridder, I'm not even considering setting him against the Falcons. They're a fantastic matchup. He's been fantastic, even against hard matchups. Waddle's really difficult. And I think maybe like the thing that you have to decide is how bad is this Texans pass defense? For the season, they've actually been good. The last 3 games before the bye, they were pretty miserable. But I just think, man, with that defensive system that knows the Mike McDaniel system so well, coming off of a bye with 2 weeks to prepare at home, they're 3-point favorites. Dolphins have an applied total of 22. I'm a little bit worried that we don't get the fireworks from the Dolphins. So Waddle is last for me amongst the tough call wide receivers. I think he's a very tough call, but not a top 36 guy.
Right, I was about to ask you, is he even a number 3 wide receiver? You mentioned that the Texans are familiar with Mike McDaniels. That goes back to San Francisco. I believe DeMeco Ryans and McDaniel were on this coaching staff at the same time. And Ryans, he's going to have a pretty good idea of what he's going up against in this offense. Plus, they get the ball out so quick, they can adjust for that. In their 3 games prior to playing Jacksonville, Adam, the Texans played zone coverage on at least 82% of their snaps. So the man zone thing, unless Houston does something that's very surprising, and teams usually play a lot of zone against Miami. I was surprised that the Jets didn't. I think you're going to see a lot of zone coverage, and that theoretically per Jacob's stat could mean bad things for Jaylen Waddle. I don't like him either.
Okay, well, it's been a long time now that the Texans have struggled, and they've got injuries in their secondary. They've had injuries, and Jalen Petre's out, I believe, right? They have allowed 17.4 or more PPR fantasy points to 9 wide receivers in their last 7 games, including Romeo Doubs, Kevontae Turpin, and Parker Washington. So it's a long stretch of them being really bad against the pass, which is shocking because they were supposed to have a very good secondary. Jamie, real quick, where do you come out on Meyers and Waddle?
I agree. Meyers is basically a must-start guy. It's just a question of, will Ridder be able to support him? I think the matchup's too easy to avoid him. But the Waddle situation, I lean toward what you just said, Adam. I mean, like, you've seen now 2 of the last 3 games where Jaylen Waddle's been heavily involved, and it was almost, building toward this with some of the conversations coming out of Miami that, okay, they need to get him going, and they finally get him going, and do you go away from that? They can't run the ball right now. Like, this run game is non-existent, so I think almost everybody's involved trying to touch the ball in the passing game in some capacity, and that at some points has been a detriment for Jaylen Waddle, as we've seen Jonnu Smith and obviously Tyreek Hill and Devon Achane. I think exactly what we talked about with the Bears is going to happen to the Dolphins like we saw last week. It took overtime for Jonnu Smith to get his numbers. The other 3 guys were doing fantastic things throughout the course of the game. So somebody's going to get left out. More times than not, has been Jaylen Waddle. If you want to bank on that, I certainly understand it. But I think he's right there with Malik Nabers, with Marvin Harrison. This game feels like it's going to be a lot of throwing for Tua Tagovailoa. And oh, by the way, we talk about Joe Burrow and had this team, things gone differently for them. Tua would be in the MVP conversation right now based on his last month, if that had been consistent over the course of the season. He's been fantastic. And so no interceptions. He's playing at one of the best stretches of his career. He's carrying this team offensively. Again, they cannot run the ball. You saw what happened last week. They just could not move the ball on the ground. So I think Tua is going to be great again. It's a matter of who's going to go along with him. I don't think this Texans defense is going to be anything of a stumbling block unless they hit him multiple times, which could obviously be the case because they have a very good pass rush. But this secondary is a disaster right now.
All right, so I'm going to read a few questions from the chat, and then we'll talk about Thursday Night Football. Ridley, Thielen, or Nabers in PPR?
Thielen for me.
Thielen.
Nabers for me.
Odunze or Flowers?
Flowers.
Agreed.
Odunze or Waddle?
Waddle.
Odunze.
I'll take Waddle.
I have Meyers, McConkey, and Amari Cooper as options for a flex in non-PPR. Who do you like?
Myers.
McConkey if he plays, Meyers if not.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. I knew that Amari Cooper wouldn't be the answer.
And then let me just ask you guys, did I mention a single receiver that you would start over Adam Thielen? Or is Adam Thielen ahead of, I'm sure you already answered this at some point, but is he ahead of Odunze, Keenan Allen, Malik Nabers. Who else? Who did we just talk about? Jaylen Waddle and Marvin Harrison Jr.
He is.
Yeah, and Meyers for me. I take him over Meyers this week.
He's ahead of all of those guys for me, except for Meyers and Nabers.
I love Heath's Malik Nabers love. It is amazing. I appreciate it. I'm glad we have another Giants fan in this world.
Yeah. I don't know if it's love. I mean, I think they're going to like wide receiver 27, but
all right, we're going to take a break and come back and after this on FFT.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
I'm excited to get this week started with hopefully a shootout, 49-point total. Rams at Niners, two teams still alive for the playoffs, and the 49ers are 2.5-point favorites here. And they have a guy, you know what? I haven't even checked the most added list. I can't imagine Patrick Taylor is not the most added player. I'm just going to go ahead and say he's the most added player, and then I will fact check myself. But let's start with the quarterbacks. Are we excited about the quarterbacks in this game? Stafford is the number 9 QB per game since his two receivers returned in week 8. And then Purdy obviously coming off a huge game. Jamie, are we excited about these guys this week?
Purdy, yes. Just looking at the way this run game is probably going to struggle and how he looked last week, I was concerned about the shoulder going into that game just because he didn't throw very much against Buffalo. And he obviously put that, concern to rest. Looked fantastic against Chicago. And I think the Rams defense, as we saw last week, struggled, to defend almost anything. Mostly it was just Josh Allen being Superman. But I think it's going to be a tough game for their defense. So Purdy's a top 10 quarterback, and Stafford's not far outside the top 12. He's just been amazing since both receivers have come back. So since week 8, he's been a top 12 quarterback. I agree with you, Adam. I think we have a chance for a shootout here. It doesn't sound like Nick Bosa is going to play, so a pass rush may not be an issue for him. Just looking at the way Stafford has operated, some of it's been, a little fluky with some garbage time production, the touchdown against the Eagles, for example. But he's just got his guys. And when he has his guys, as we saw at the end of last season and as we're seeing right now, like he has the ability to still be 20 to 25 points. And I think that puts him as a low-end starter.
Okay. So Jameis Winston or Stafford?
Stafford.
Jameis.
I'll take Winston.
2 Jameses and a Stafford.
I'd take Jameis over Purdy too. But
what's your hesitation with Purdy?
No, I have Jameis as the top 10 quarterback.
Oh, okay. Yeah, look, obviously no teams on a bye and good options here. So we like Purdy, we like Stafford. By the way, Dave, I'm sorry. Thursday Night Football.
Nope.
Oh, it's my fault. I should not have missed it.
You did it before the break.
Barely. Is anyone hesitant to start Kyren Williams?
Nope.
No.
RB2.
I mean, the 49ers have a very good run defense, and he just...
They do?
Yes, they do. They do. They allow 4 yards per carry to running backs, which is great in this environment. And if you take away the Bills game where they couldn't move, it's probably more like 3.8 yards per carry to running backs. But even if it's 4, I mean, that's good. And Kyren is not rarely involved in the passing game.
I've got 6 running backs in the last 7 games against San Francisco getting at least 13.9 PPR points. 5 have had at least 17 PPR points, 11 rushing touchdowns to a running back in their past 8 games, including 2 touchdowns to Buffalo running backs. That sounds not right. I'm not sure if that's what happened, but I've got no problem starting Kyren Williams, who's been playing well. He's 10th for me at running back. That's a low end RB1.
This is definitely one of those situations where the fantasy points allowed and like what we think about the actual defense don't align, because they have been absolutely torched by running backs over the last 6 weeks.
They give up touchdowns. But they're good against the run.
What does Kyren do?
He scores touchdowns. He sure does.
Right.
All right. So starting both Rams wide receivers, they're both top 12. And we are going to get some Cooper Kupp questions, I'm sure. So if you have any Cooper Kupp questions, go for it. I know he's been, I think Jamie mentioned some garbage time touchdowns, for Stafford. Like Kupp's kind of had a couple of games where he hasn't done much. The Eagles game, and then 2 weeks ago, I forget who it was against. It was pretty late. Saints game, maybe, where he got, whatever. Okay. Anywho, Sid Higbee, start Purdy or Goff?
Goff.
I have Goff higher.
Purdy for me.
Let's clean up a couple of stats here. Yes, Buffalo had 2 rushing touchdowns from their running backs against San Francisco in Week 13. Yes, Cooper Kupp had 6 targets, 3 catches, and 17 yards with no touchdowns against the New Orleans Saints 2 games ago. Right. That was a game where the Rams didn't have to throw a ton. And I think this is going to be a game where the Rams are probably going to throw, as much as they normally have. So Kupp is at worst a good wide receiver 2, even in full PPR. But he's got the upside to be a wide receiver 1. So I don't see how you get away from him.
All right, here's some Kupp questions from the chat. Kupp or Evans?
Is this going to be a couple of Kupp questions?
Kupp.
Maybe.
Evans makes me nervous.
All right, Kupp over Evans.
I'll take Evans.
2 at Kupps and an Evans. 1 Evans, 2 Kupps. Cooper Kupp or Patrick Taylor?
Kupp.
Same.
I'm starting Kupp. This is from Robbins. This is not from me. I'm starting Kupp, T. Higgins, and Malik Nabers and benching A.J. Brown. No.
Bench Nabers.
Bench Nabers.
Yep, I would bench Nabers.
Yeah, I have Brown ranked ahead of Nabers because I'm a coward. Projections do have Nabers higher.
Come on, squeaky crickets, man. You know how it works. All right, let's talk about Patrick Taylor. This is the big guy to talk about here because we're going to start Juwan Jennings. He's like a no-brainer, right?
Yep.
I think he is.
And then we'll get to Deebo Samuel, who also wants the ball. But Patrick Taylor, where is he in your rankings right now against the Rams, who are 19th against running backs, allow 4.6 yards per carry to running backs?
Probably end up being 24 right now, 25.
I think he's 30, maybe 29. I'm a little bit concerned that he has two drives where he averages 3 yards per carry, and all of a sudden Keyshawn Vaughn or Izzy Abanikanda gets a drive and breaks a long run, and I don't feel as confident at all in Taylor as I did in Garindo.
For sure, I feel similarly. I do think that Patrick Taylor might have a little bit more leash than that, and I also don't think that Keyshawn Vaughn is any better of a player than Patrick Taylor. Abanikanda would be the one that I'd be a little bit more nervous about, but Kyle Shanahan said this week that he's still learning. He's still kind of putting it together in the meeting rooms and not necessarily on the field. So I think just by default, Patrick Taylor will be the guy that gets 15 carries. I like that he's got fresh legs. I like that the Rams defense played on Sunday, and now here they are playing again on Thursday. I don't like him as far as the talent goes. I don't know how many runs he'll have longer than 15 yards. And I think he can catch the ball a little bit. I think we've got him in the right range. I think he's a low-end number 2, high-end number 3 running back.
I'd start him over Tracy.
I had to. Yeah.
I would not.
I don't have it that way now, but I might be open to it just because Tracy's matchup is so ugly.
The combination of we're on the 4th string running back. I guess we'd technically be the 5th string.
It's the 5th, right? Yeah.
5th string running back and the Deebo squeaky wheel makes me wonder if a few more of those running back touches go to Deebo this week.
He had 5 carries last week. I mean, we have, it was obviously a big boot. You can see a big difference for Deebo Samuel, he's the one who had 5 carries last week, when McCaffrey plays and when he doesn't, in terms of his role in the rushing game. Read this question here from Mark. Taylor or Pacheco in PPR?
Taylor.
Pacheco.
I'd go Pacheco.
Let me ask you Taylor versus some wide receivers. How about Patrick Taylor, or Jaylen Waddle at Houston?
Taylor.
I have Waddle higher.
Waddle.
Half PPR.
Taylor.
I said what I said.
Taylor.
Half PPR, Patrick Taylor or Malik Nabers against Baltimore?
Nabers.
Taylor.
Yeah, probably Nabers.
Patrick Taylor or let's say Josh Downs if he plays at Denver.
JD.
Downs in PPR.
Probably Downs.
All right. Devontae Smith or Patrick Taylor?
Taylor.
Taylor in half PPR, Devontae in full.
Any interest in starting Deebo Samuel this week?
No.
I think the only reason to start him is based on narrative. based on his social media posts, based on, well, maybe he can get 5 carries again and do more with it. But he really just has not looked like his old self, especially since he had the oblique injury, was in the hospital. I don't have the confidence to do it.
Full PPR, but like as Jamie talked about, like you might have just had Deebo as your flex the last couple of weeks and you're winning despite him. Like Thielen's the only guy for sure off the waiver wire that I could pick up that I would start over him.
Right.
Yeah, I think the thing is, like, you want to talk about the squeaky wheel narratives. This team can't afford to just feature Deebo Samuel. Like, this is a must-win game for the 49ers. And you saw what happened last week. Must-win game for the 49ers. Deebo's not touching the ball by design in the passing game. Like, this is a Kittle, Jennings, maybe Deebo, maybe somebody else. Like, he's basically getting the same amount of targets as Pearsall at this point, it feels like. So there's just not a reason to, and most likely he's gone at the end of the season. So complain all you want. Like,
let me read some questions here from the chat. Juwan Jennings.
AJ Brown narrative is much different. Like, this is the team that needs to get themselves right for the playoffs. So they want to make sure that he's happy.
Juwan Jennings or Tyrone Tracy, full PPR?
Jennings.
Yes, Jennings.
Yeah, Jennings.
Juwan Jennings or AJ Brown?
Oh, I think I have Brown higher, but I think it's close.
Brown.
All right. I think he said Jennings.
Yep.
Patrick Taylor or Sincere McCormick?
McCormick.
I'll take Taylor.
I am going to have this decision as soon as waivers run in our magazine league, and I'm going to start Taylor over McCormick. And here's Michael said, I just voted for you guys. Thank you so much, Michael. How about some full PPR league feedback? AJ Brown, T. Higgins, Devontae Adams, JSN, Loud McConkey, Rico Dowdle, Tony Pollard.
Those are names.
There's no question. That's a great team.
Awesome.
Pick 3 receivers: Brown, Higgins, Adams, JSN. Let's just say that's the question. And McConkey.
Brown, Higgins, Adams.
Yep.
All right. Start George Kittle and the 49ers DST. Start or sit. Would you put the Ravens over them? Would you put the Commanders over them?
Yes and yes.
How about the Cardinals?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I'd start the Falcons over them.
Yes.
Yeah, I would not go that far, but
All right, Dave, that's it for Thursday Night Football.
Nah.
And now it's time for... There we go. Ooh, I nailed it. All right, first Fantasy Cops is from Justin. Justin has a dilemma. I play in a 24-team league where the champs of each conference plays in the championship in week 17. Week 14 is and was a play-in week for the cusp playoff teams, the 3, 4, 5, 6 seeds, while the top 2 seeds get a bye. I was one of the cusp teams. I had the 3 seed. I ended up tying with the 6 seed with 130.2 fantasy points apiece in week 14. There is no rule for what happens in a tie during this play-in round. We have 2 commissioners for either conference, barring a stat correction. The commissioner of my conference wants to go with the team with the most points for. Selfishly, I want that too, as I have scored 200 more points this season than the 6 seed. The other commissioner is exploring options like splitting winnings, depending on how far you go into the playoffs. Whatever should we do?
best seed wins tiebreakers in the playoffs.
Because the best seed had the better regular season.
Not necessarily the most points, but yes.
You got to give some reward to finishing higher than the other team.
Yep.
Yeah. That's how I do it. And it's not points, it's record for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
With points being the second tiebreaker. But yeah, higher seed gets the tie. Okay, good. Go with that. Next up. Oh, I don't have a name on this one. Sorry. A trade just caused a big stir in my dynasty league. You couldn't see, but I stirred my hands like it was a pot. And I would love the cop's opinion. The locked in number 1 seed was facing a team that was in a win and get in scenario heading into Monday Night Football. The win and in team was done, and he was up about 10 points. The number 1 seed still had Joe Burrow. Minutes before kickoff, the win and in team made a massive overpaid trade in a dynasty league. Gave up C.J. Stroud and a first-round pick for Joe Burrow in a 1-quarterback league. So the 1 seed then had C.J. Stroud, took a 0, and the win and in team started Joe Burrow and is now in the playoffs. No.
No.
A lot of people are pissed.
Yeah.
What's wrong?
On Monday.
I don't understand.
What's wrong with it, you said?
Why are people mad?
Because are you allowed to trade players during games?
Not during games. It was Monday afternoon.
And one team was on a bye.
It was between the Sunday and the Monday games.
Yeah.
You can't trade players in between games.
If the players haven't played yet, why not?
I think I'm fine with it. I think I agree with Heath.
It's a great move. It was brilliant.
Well, why would
Great
the one seed trade Burrow?
Yeah, why would he trade him to get a first and CJ Stroud?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I don't know if he overpaid for Burrow. It is a 1 QB league. He gave up Stroud and a first-round rookie pick for Burrow.
Like, that's a great trade for the team trying to get in the playoffs. It's a terrible trade for the 1 seed unless you just have Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen.
I think he might. I think there was a follow-up email that he might have Lamar Jackson or something, but I'm not sure about that. But, like, we're cool with this, right?
Brilliant.
Yeah, Stroud's on a bye, so you could drop Stroud if you needed to, in most leagues, or picked up anybody from team on a bye. And, yeah.
I guess I never tried to make a trade or complete a trade while in the middle of a week's worth of games.
Well,
obviously, you can't trade a player.
To do because you have to,
sure,
in this specific situation.
Sure.
I think it is dependent on. I think there are certain sites that would not allow you to do that, and certain sites that would. But it's obviously this site allowed them to do it.
And it doesn't matter the site; it's a league rule. It shouldn't be a site rule. Heath, what was I about to ask you? I was about to ask you a question about dynasty trade deadlines. Just in general, should there never be one? Should there be one at the end of the regular season? What's the rule on that?
Completely up to the league, whatever the league prefers. I have leagues that had trade deadlines 3 weeks ago. I have leagues that have trade deadlines this week. I have leagues that have no trade deadlines at all. Just like whatever the league wants is perfectly fine.
They should stop when the playoffs start.
Big Burger stops Thursday, right when the game starts.
It should have been before this scoring period.
It's
all right. Maybe it's not as crazy.
It's kind of fun to have trades in the semifinals.
All right, one more Fantasy Cops issue. So those of you who listen to the podcast know that I have this rule. Well, maybe you know. I have this rule that I like to implement that if you score the most points, even if you're not one of the playoff seeds, you are guaranteed to be in the playoffs. You would get the last seed and you would kick out whoever was the 6th seed or the 4th seed, depending on the size of the league. I am the commissioner of a league in which I never actually said that rule.
Mm-hmm. This exact thing happened to me, I think, in the first year of our YOLO league.
Okay, so I never said that rule, but I never said any rules about who made the playoffs. I never sent out an email that said these are the teams that make the playoffs. Mm-hmm. The playoffs start next week. Mm-hmm. It's a 10-team league, and there are 4 teams that make the playoffs. The team that currently has the most points is not in the playoffs, is out, is eliminated.
Right. I think because that team dropped Caleb Williams in a super flex league, they probably still should be kept out of the playoffs.
So you noticed that, huh? We have the most points, but we are eliminated from the playoffs. And I was like, oh man, I wish I had made that rule. But I think there's no way I could implement that now. That would be horrible for the commissioner to be like, hey, guess what? If the playoffs started this week, we'd be in. But yeah, no, I won't do that.
I got a commissioner question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Should teams on a bye, so you're first or second, you get a bye, have to have a legal lineup?
Absolutely not.
Wait. Yes. In terms of you should have to have a kicker and a DST. You can't just hoard like any players you want. I think so.
I don't care so much about that, but you definitely can't just be carrying 4 extra players.
That's fair.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. You can't do that.
So I'm going to see if Dave's lineup's illegal now.
I don't think you'll find it. I don't think so. And if it is, I'll fix it.
All right, I got some emails to read.
Keith, you've got to give me credit. I've been fixing it all year in every league.
I haven't noticed it once all season long, and I don't see that you currently have an illegal lineup.
Damn right.
And I want to give a shout out to Thomas Schaefer. He is having an incredible season. I guess I'm facing him in the magazine league. Yeah, nothing could stop Thomas Schaefer, especially in the magazine league. He is unbelievable. He's unstoppable.
The worst thing that happened was I kicked the crap out of Heath last week in our dynasty league. Like, my team could not have been better, and his team was still good, but my team just absolutely, like, everybody showed up. Yeah. And then I got to play him this week where he didn't have Henry, and he didn't have Joe Mixon. And he's going to kill me this week. It's not even going to be close.
You scored about 20 too many points. If you had scored a little few over points, you'd have played a team that hasn't
No,
scored
this
near
was. Did you see what happened between USF and FAU?
No.
They kicked an onside kick last year when they were up by like 3 touchdowns. FAU did to beat USF, and then USF was like throwing late in the game this year, and the coach, USF's coach, just walked past Tom Herman and like barely shook his hand, and they got into it on the field. This is exactly what it's like. Like I ran up the score on Heath apparently, and now he's going to return the favor.
I think it was the highest scoring week, definitely of the season, maybe of all time. Like it was an incredible week.
Not only was it an incredible week, it put me like I was hoping to play Will because Will's team is not that good, and I jumped up to the 2 seed, and now I got to play you.
Yeah. I think we're all facing each other in the playoffs in different leagues. It's pretty fun. But let me finish off the show with some emails at Fantasy
Heath and Dave are in the Telethon League.
Yeah, well, I'm playing Schaefer in one league, Heath in another, and then in that Dynasty League that you're talking about. Who's the 1 seed again?
You.
We already brought this up, Dave.
Not that he was the 1 seed, was he?
No, just that I had a legal lineup.
I was the 1 seed last year. And Jamie beat me in the championship. So I don't know if the 1 seeds won that league very often.
Let's go. Caleb says, start 4 in PPR. One of them has to be a running back. So give me your running back first. Ramondre, Breece Hall, Patrick Taylor, Rico Dowdle, Tyrone Tracy.
Say it again. I'm sorry.
Hall if he goes.
Pick one running back. Ramondre, Breece Hall, Patrick Taylor, Rico Dowdle, Tyrone Tracy.
I think it's Breece if he goes. Otherwise, it's Rico.
Yep.
I think I'm going Rico either way just because I don't think Breece is 100%.
And then we need 3 more flexes. So let's just say it's Rico Dowdle. Ramondre Stevenson, Breece Hall, Patrick Taylor, Tyrone Tracy, Malik Nabers, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jaden Reed.
This sounds like our show today.
Yeah, I know.
Breece Hall would be one.
Hall would be in there if he's active. I think Nabers would be in there.
Yeah. And I go Taylor.
I don't know if I'd go Taylor.
Over Ramondre.
Yeah, I kind of like Ramondre.
I don't really like Ramondre very much.
He's a nice guy.
I'm not sure we got consensus there. Jay in St. Louis, start 3 receivers. Mike Evans, Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, Marvin Harrison, Brian Thomas.
The first 2 and the last 1. We're starting 3, right?
Yeah, you said Evans, McLaurin, Brian Thomas.
Yeah.
There's just too many names. Like, come on, make a couple decisions yourself. Send me the last 2 that you're not sure about who you want to start.
You did.
You got 5. You can pick your wide receiver 1 and your wide receiver 2. Just give me your the last 2.
All right. This is from Kevin. Dear AJ, Terrell, Irving, and Harold. Probably Terrell. So who's Harold? These are Eagles receivers?
I think those are Eagles. It's Terrell. Terrell Owens.
Yeah, Terrell. Yeah. But who's Harold?
Harold Carmichael.
Oh, okay. I need to sit a wide receiver.
These young kids.
Mike Evans, CeeDee Lamb. Not anymore. I'm a Raiders fan now. Mike Evans, CeeDee Lamb, Drake London, Devontae Adams. Who sits? PPR.
Evans.
I think I'll say London.
From Luke. Which 2 of these would you start if Garendo is out? Patrick Taylor, Tyrone Tracy, Malik Nabers, Brian Thomas.
The receivers I'd start.
Who was the first name you said?
Patrick Taylor, Tyrone Tracy, Malik Nabers, Brian Thomas.
Yeah, I would go with Thomas and Taylor.
I'd go with Thomas and Nabers.
Mm-hmm.
From Doug. Why are you so down on Bo Nix this week? That's what I was wondering, but you know what? We're going to save that for tomorrow's show because I agree. I thought they were all a little too low on.
Go back to the very beginning go back to the very beginning of the podcast.
Fair.
He's in the 8 through 20 group.
From Cheryl, Sam Darnold or Khalil Herbert? No. Sam Darnold or Justin Herbert?
Darnold.
Sam.
Darnold.
Vikings or Chiefs?
Chiefs.
I think I'll take the Vikings.
The only thing with the Vikings is that Caleb doesn't throw interceptions, and
Yeah.
Jameis may throw 2 pick sixes.
Oh, that's our stat of the game. Jamie. Highest interception rate in the NFL for the Vikings, and Caleb doesn't throw interceptions. Next one is from someone in Hawaii. Says mahalo.
Gary?
Rico Dowdle or Tony Pollard?
Pollard.
I believe I have Pollard ranked higher than Rico.
P.S. Diehard is aggressive to me. That is wrong. From Colin. PPR flex. Juwan Jennings or Calvin Ridley? Jennings.
Yes.
Yep.
This is from Simon B. Dodd in a town in North Luxembourg.
Everyone knows where that is.
Choose 4. It's half PPR, but it's 1.5 PPR for tight end. Ooh. Terry McLaurin, Evan Ingram, Mark Andrews, Cortland Sutton, Adam Thielen, Braylon Allen, Elijah Moore. I'm going to eliminate Braylon Allen.
We already forgot the first 3 names.
I'm going to eliminate Allen and Moore. So sit one of these guys. Remember, it's half PPR, but it's 1.5 for a tight end. So sit one. McLaurin, Ingram, Andrews, Sutton, Thielen.
Ingram.
Man, the scoring though, and half PPR only for the receiver. So
triple premium there.
I think I'll sit Thielen.
I probably sit Thielen too, as much as I like him.
Yeah. I don't think Ingram's doing a lot, and I think he's hurt.
No, but he could probably get 4 catches, and that's worth as many.
That's 6 points.
That's worth as many as 12 catches for Thielen.
He'll get 4 catches for 17 yards and no touchdowns. Thielen can
Okay, you know what? I'm feeling that, Dave. I feel that. All right, this is from D in Seattle. Start 4, 3 receivers and a flex. CeeDee Lamb, Juwan Jennings, Jakobi Meyers, Devontae Smith. No. Amari Cooper. No. Nico Collins.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah. But that's Billy Madison, right?
The no?
Yeah, it's like when she's trying to spell, she spells couch wrong or something.
Yeah.
Like
I feel like the last 5 minutes has just been you reading player
W.
names.
No. Heath, are you going to the ball today? We're out of here. We'll talk to you tomorrow on Fantasy Football Today. See ya.